This morning I will talk on the financial aspects, what we did in appropriations on Senate Bill 2151, and then I'll yield the floor to the policy carrier, Representative Schreiberbeck, to talk on policy on the bill. What we did and what we have before you is the Early Childhood Education Bill. This provides grants to children, parents of children who choose to send their sons or daughters to early childhood education. As it came over from the Senate, the program pretty much was open to everyone. You could receive either a $1,000 grant or a $1,500 grant, depending on the income. What we did down in appropriations, we changed that to needs-based only, so only those people that qualify for free and reduced lunches are now able to access this grant money. If you qualify for free lunch, you can receive up to a $2,000 grant. If you qualify for a reduced lunch, you can receive up to a $1,000 grant. We also then, because we limited those that could access this, we took the fiscal note down from $6 million down to $3 million. And that is what we did in appropriations, and your appropriations voted to pass this out as a due pass, and we also ask for your green vote. But before I pass it over to the policy, Mr. Speaker, if I may continue.
Me.
I know there's a lot of discussion on this bill. Which way is this a good thing or a bad thing? And I did talk to a couple different preschool or kindergarten teachers, and I said, hey, is this a good thing or isn't this? And they said, well, let me answer it this way. If you put me in a room with a group of new kindergartners, by the end of that day, I can pretty much tell you with a high degree of accuracy which one of those students attended pre-K. So the educational component, they felt, definitely was there as far as teaching these children at an early age. They said, however, and one of the most important things that they said is children at this age develop at different stages and at different times. So whatever you do, and as long as you keep it up to the parents to decide, and that's what this bill does. This doesn't force anything. It still puts that decision in the parents' hands. Is my son or daughter ready for this? Do I want my son or daughter even to participate in this or not? It's totally up to the parents to decide. And then not only is it up to the parents to decide, but the parents can also choose then, where do I want my child to get this early childhood education? So those are two very important aspects of the bill. It's what the bill does, doesn't force it on anyone, puts the decision in the parents' hands. So, Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, again, I recommend that you follow the appropriations recommendation as a due pass and vote green. And at this time, I will now hand it over to Representative Schreiberbeck for any further policy comments. Thank you.
Representative Schreiberbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Dosh. Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly, your Committee on Education, with a vote of 8-5, recommends the passage of engrossed Senate Bill 2151, and of course that vote was prior to the amendments placed on by appropriations, but we would still recommend that passage. For background, the 63rd Legislative Assembly provided two opportunities for early childhood education. First, the legislature invited school districts to start their own programs if they chose the use of local tax dollars. Second, the 63rd Legislature asked for a comprehensive study of the early childhood education and care issues. The results of the study revealed a growing need for quality early care and education programs and disparity of quality early education programs available. Additionally, the study committee members provided the framework of community-generated solutions and partnerships for early childhood education that are detailed in Senate Bill 2151. So engrossed Senate Bill 2151 is a bill to provide early childhood education to those who may elect to enroll their child. As Representative Dosh stated, it is not mandatory. Section 1 provides the information if a person or school district requests approval of an early childhood education program. Section 2 is a community framework led by the school district superintendent with input from all public and private providers of early childhood education services. The community is to determine the most cost-effective method to deliver services through the formation of a coalition with a governing board, which the local school board provides advice and guidance to. Providers determine if they wish to participate and must submit an application for approval to the Department of Commerce for a grant. The local governing board certifies to the department that the provider meets the operation requirements. Additionally, they have to have 10 hours of research-based parental involvement, along with the approximately 12 hours per week for early childhood education. Section 3 details the receipt and distribution of the grants to the Department of Commerce, defines the eligibility of the child, defines the program requirements of at least 400 hours over a period of 32 consecutive weeks. Section 4 defines how children will be accepted and the limitation considerations. Section 5 details the data collection requirements of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. Section 6 requires the Superintendent of Public Instruction to study the implementation of a uniform system for the accounting and budgeting and reporting of data by an early childhood education provider who has received the grant. Section 7 is the appropriation of now $3 million to the Department of Commerce. And I will review a little bit the testimony. 2 of the bill sponsors and 5 others testified in favor of Senate Bill 2151, citing the following. Research provides data that a high-quality early childhood program provides significant long-term benefits that include encouraging brain development and improving a child's ability to learn for a lifetime, building emotional and social skills needed later in school, acquiring the skills to follow directions, work with peers, and finish projects, reducing the need for special education services, and from an economic perspective, returning a 12% investment after inflation. Statistics from the studies indicate that children who participate in high-quality early childhood programs were 25% less likely to drop out of school, 40% less likely to become a teen parent, 50% less likely to be placed in special education, 60% less likely to never attend college, and 70% less likely to be arrested for a violent crime. These statistics equate to the likelihood of reduction in cost of state-funded programs in the future. Beyond providing the positive statistics of a pre-K program, the superintendent and preschool teacher from the Underwood School District that has operated a public early childhood education program for over 20 years provided testimony and data from their program. The superintendent related that in the last 2 years, the Underwood District has been the top scoring school in the state for reading for low-income students. We did have testimony in opposition, and both stating that children should receive their pre-education from parents in a family setting, and were concerned that the early childhood would become mandatory. Additionally, it was stated that the benefits don't justify the cost, and that responsible parenting requires a great deal of time and money, and that social services provides for those who need assistance caring for infants and toddlers. Mr. Speaker, may I continue?
You may.
Sad to say, but the June Cleaver days have faded. It is unlikely that June would be home caring for Beaver today. The following statistics are from Kids Count. In 2012, 88% of North Dakota children live with their married or single mothers. 82% of the mothers in North Dakota have to follow along, are in the labor force. 78% of North Dakota children ages 0 through 13 lived in situations where all parents were in the workforce. As a note, the major contributor to financial stability and well-being of children is parents having secure employment. In the 2013 through 15 biennium, over $30 million was appropriated through human services for child care. Of that, $233,000 was for early childhood education, or Head Start, which serves children birth to 5 years of age. In 2013, child care assistance programs helped low-income families pay child care bills for 4,381 children. Private and public early childhood education exists across the state, all locally and client-funded. In March 2015, the enrollment of 3- and 4-year-olds in early childhood education was 61% in District 13, 57% in District 34, and 49% in District 25. This bill would allow for additional qualifying families the option to enroll their 4-year-old in an early childhood education program to prepare them for kindergarten. This bill would also serve as a catalyst for communities to form a coalition and work together to provide early childhood education programs. When WEN acknowledges that over $30 million was appropriated in the 2013-15 biennium for basic child care, it makes sense to augment the basic care to include early childhood education. Early childhood education is not a new idea in North Dakota. In 1894, the superintendent of public instruction reported to the governor that the school age be changed so as to admit children of 3 or 4 years of age into the country districts for the summer term, where there are or can be obtained proper facilities to teach them and proper seats to accommodate them. I urge your support of Senate Bill 2151. This is a one-time expenditure and will benefit many. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ruby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, I would hope that we could defeat this bill, and for several reasons. First of all, we go down this road. I remember the days when we were talking about all-day, everyday kindergarten. And yes, kindergarten is still voluntary, but you're frowned upon if you don't put your kid in it. And first of all, it was also voluntary for the schools to have an all-day, everyday kindergarten program, but they wouldn't do it unless we paid for it. And now, here we are, starting down the road. Once that was achieved, now we're starting the early childhood education. So now we get a hold of them even sooner in the public system. And the parents who are choosing to put their kids into some of the classes is fine. It's great. That's their choice. I have some grandkids that participate in that at this time. And it's at my kids' choice, and it will be here again for now. But one of the things we talk about, the beneficial aspects of educating these kids sooner. There's a lot of benefits to kids learning how to play without all the structure and just using their imaginations and having that kind of free time as well. So I would hope that we're not always worried about what's happening with those kids not being in a structured system. We talk about the Leave It to Beaver days and that kind of thing. Isn't it funny that the more government has intruded into the family, the lower it has sunk? The changes, the hardships, the lack of security that some of these kids have by not having parents in their life. I just think that we're trying to fix something that we go down the road saying that, well, here's a problem, we need to fix it, and we get more involved and that problem gets worse. So why don't we maybe look inward and realize that maybe we shouldn't be involved at that level. The other thing that bothers me about this bill is how it ties it to whether or not you qualify for either reduced or free lunch. And Title I is set up that way as well for reading programs in the schools. There's schools that could use those dollars for kids that are having trouble reading in their school, but they don't get those dollars because they live in an area where apparently the parents are choosing not to sign up for those programs. So now the school is hurt because of that. And so I don't think that's a good barometer to put on it. In my younger day, when I had all my kids at home, and with a big family, I had a lot of dependents. I had a lot of deductions on my taxes. I actually, for the income I had, qualified for those programs, but I chose not to participate in those because I was paying for my own kids' meal. And I figured I could do that like I would do if they were at home. So, again, my kid and myself would not be eligible for this program because I chose not to sign up for a government subsidy. I think that's a wrong message to send. I think that's a wrong way to incentivize this program and to push people to accepting subsidized meals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Rick C. Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, This bill is really all about a general belief that children and society as a whole are better off if government provides schooling for 3- and 4-year-olds. It's a belief that government should control for the unfair effects of different home life experiences, whether they come from a home that's rich or poor, one parent or two, nurturing or abusive, giving high education a high or low priority. And it's a belief that the only way to manage that is to get kids into a controlled environment early on so as to mitigate any undesirable effects of some parents in favor of the optimal effects of the government. The whole concept of this leveling the playing field doesn't really level anything. That cliche, in fact, is used ad nauseum to urge for new government spending and programs that frequently have unknown or dubious outcomes. I'd like to take just a couple minutes to look at some of these studies. The bill carrier referenced a lot of statistics, and those statistics and others, a lot of the groundswell for the support for this bill comes from specific studies. There are two in particular. Before I talk about those, I want to just briefly talk about a different study that was done. And this study proved that carrying matches in your back pocket causes lung cancer. I probably don't need to explain in too great of detail that people who carry matches in their back pocket actually do have a higher incidence of lung cancer. The thing is that it's not the matches that cause lung cancer, it's the fact that people who carry matches are more likely to be smokers. So carrying the matches in your back pocket is a correlative factor, not a causal factor. So keep that in mind when I talk about these next studies. The famous high-scope Perry preschool study in Michigan. It was conducted on poor inner-city African-American children aged 3 to 4, going to preschool between 1962 and 1967. Imagine how important education must have been to those families that in that environment, with so much going against them, they still sent their kids to preschool. Do you think the children of these families did better than the kids that didn't attend preschool because of the 1 or 2 years of preschool they had? Or do you suppose it could be that those families that held education so dear continued to influence their children throughout their childhood on the importance of education and self-improvement? Like the matches in the other study, pre-K is not the causal factor. Next is the Abecedarian study done in North Carolina in 1972, again on poor black children. This study took children from infancy through age 5, 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. They had individualized prescription of educational activities which address social, emotional, and cognitive development. How in the world can you extrapolate this study to the 4-year-olds going to part-time pre-K in North Dakota in 2016? You can't. These are the studies that are cited with all the pseudoscientific statistics about 12% return, $7.16 for every dollar, crime rates, education, wedlock, it's so on and so forth. There are also several other studies which lack scientific rigor, which sometimes show a limited improvement initially, including an extremely limited study of a single elementary school in North Dakota. Nearly all studies that have looked at any desirable effects into elementary school years have consistently shown a fade-out effect. This fade-out is a finding that any areas of improvement are gone by the 3rd grade. This was even referenced in testimony in favor of the bill in a study called Letters of Learning, Fighting Fade-Out by Advancing PK3 Alignment. This study confirms the fade-out effect, and as a solution advocates for an entirely different paradigm for education going from age 3 through grade 16, involving a lot of socialization and coordinated parental involvement by the state. It's not quite cradle to grave government, but it's getting very close. Other studies, very quickly, which also address the indisputable fade-out effect include PK3, an aligned coordinated approach to education for children aged 3 to 8, done in 2005, evaluation of the Tennessee pre-K program, kindergarten and 1st grade follow-up results in 2013, Accountability Review Council report to the School Reform Commission in 2013, and many others. The disproven studies along with the fade-out studies show without a doubt that pre-K, although frequently a wonderful option, is not benefiting disadvantaged children in a meaningful or long-lasting manner as a means of leveling the playing field. As long as we do not see ourselves fit to manage the children's and their families' home lives, we cannot level this playing field and shouldn't try. I am happy that the bill limits the grant subsidies for those that are on reduced or free lunches. At least that way we're not giving money to people that weren't even asking for it. But don't be lulled into a sense of acquiescence. No serious advocate of pre-K believes we should stop at low-income 4-year-old children attending part-time daycare preschool voluntarily. They believe very much that it should be full-time, begun at age 3 or earlier, and eventually be fully government-funded. Unless you think that's a good idea, please don't vote green. In the committee hearing, it was said, quote, "Whether we think it has value or not doesn't matter." I couldn't disagree more. Taking the next steps to increase government involvement in our preschoolers' lives, a step from which we will not return, should at least have some value to the parents of these children, shouldn't it? Please don't give in to the sense of inevitability that comes when labor unions, the bureaucrats, the crony business organizations, and the yes men band together to push an agenda. Don't give in to the fear and pressure of ridicule, like we saw in the Fargo Forum this morning. Please say no to the nanny state. Please vote red.
Representative Leaning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand in opposition to this bill as well. Quite frankly, if our schools can't teach our kids in 13 years, 14th year isn't going to make any difference as far as their education goes. Just like Representative Becker said, all of these studies seem to fade out when you get to about the 3rd or 4th grade, that these kids are just as smart as the other ones. Kids need an opportunity to be a kid. You can't just shove them into schools and leave them there forever and think they're going to turn out. They need social activities as well. A book is not the only source of learning in this world. This bill is just a first step. I don't think anybody here really believes that this is going to continue to be a voluntary thing, or that it's only going to be part-time. Your parents have the choice. Eventually it's going to come in, it'll be a mandatory year of school. And it won't be just 12 hours a week either. It's just like kindergarten. We didn't need that years ago either. But this bill is bad. We should stay out of it as government. If parents want their kids in preschool, let them find a way to put them in. We don't need government involvement. We don't need the expense either. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Strandon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, things are falling off my desk. I was reminded of this quote this morning. I think it's by Harry Truman. "Everyone deserves a fair shot at a decent, fulfilling, and economically secure life." This bill really isn't about the pull between public, private, or home education and daycare. The bill gets kids into a safe learning environment. Families who would benefit from this bill probably don't have money for daycare. Many of us have door knocked, a lot of us that live in the larger towns, and smaller towns too, and found young children home alone because parents couldn't afford daycare or preschool. This is an important step forward for North Dakota. Several of my colleagues mentioned this bill would head us down a wrong road. As you know, as a body, we have the opportunity to vote yes or no on every bill before us, so we can feel comfortable making this step, knowing that we have the choice to reevaluate this program and not to expand past children who qualify for free and reduced lunches. Thank you.
Representative Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the bill carrier yield to a question? One of the bill carriers.
Representative Schreiber-Beck.
Schreiber-Beck.
Will you yield to question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will yield to a question, and if I can't, I will yield to...
Representative Meyer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Schreiber-Beck, the way the bill is currently written now, would these same children qualify for Head Start?
Representative Schreiber-Beck.
I would have to look up the exact statistics for Head Start. Head Start works with 0 to age 4. So it's a little bit different program, and I'm going to guess that they probably may or may not qualify, and Head Start is an excellent program, but I don't think it's in every area, and it's not in every community.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ballou.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the representative from District 25 respond to another question?
Representative Schreiber-Beck, will you yield the question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will yield to a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Blue.
And Representative Schreiber-Beck, you mentioned in your comments that 82% of the parents or the mothers are working, and that many of them already get child care assistance through the Department of Human Services budget. My question to you is, if we were to pass this bill, could we reduce in the Department of Human Services child care assistance line item in that budget by $3 million also? Because I see this as another babysitting service.
Representative Schreiber-Beck.
Yes, Representative Blue, and I appreciate the question. I don't know that Human Services, although I've had the discussion with some Human Services people, as long as we're advocating that we provide daycare, which is totally different from early childhood education or 12 hours of early childhood education a week, that possibility that it could occur in that budgetary, as a line item in that budget, and it does not, and at this point, and whether or not it would in the future remains to be seen if Human Services would like to do that. What's unique about this right now is neither Human Services or the Department of Education is handling this. It's coming through Commerce as the neutral body, so which provides some interest the way the bill is written, and it was written intentionally, I believe, that way.
Representative Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is another step from the cradle-to-grave socialism. Some years ago, the human service budget was a little over $1 million. 2 days ago, we passed a $3.5 billion human service budget. Let's kill this bill.
Representative Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly. In earlier floor speech, there was a discussion on Head Start, and I guess that just rose a point in my world that I'd like to just bring up, which is we're very fortunate in District 20 that we have a spectacular Head Start program that exists because of Mayville State University. And so through two of our major communities, Mayville and Hillsborough, we have Head Start, but there's also always a lengthy waiting list. People are vying for a spot to be able to get into those Head Starts like you can't believe. So what this leaves is a major gap in our child care, the ability for our working families to be able to have good child care that also provides great education. This bill does exactly that. It helps to provide an opportunity for underprivileged or children who come from families who are just working to make ends meet, but still want to be able to provide their children with an opportunity to succeed in life. This is a great opportunity for us to show to the communities of North Dakota that we too value those North Dakota families. Please vote green. Thank you.
Representative Wallman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly. I wasn't going to get up and speak on this because I thought it was a no-brainer, but it clearly is a more contentious issue than I would ever have imagined. I would just like to point out that kindergarten is still optional in North Dakota. Our kids don't have to go to school until they're 7. Every grade is optional. We have a thriving homeschool community across our state. This is never going to be mandatory in North Dakota, and I don't know why anyone would think that it would be. And on a personal note, I actually homeschooled my son for kindergarten, even though it wasn't mandatory, because he needed an enriched environment, and I was very proactive about it. I had the good fortune of staying home with my kids, but I chose preschool because it's not about numbers and letters at that age, it's about socialization, and those kids need an enriched environment. And, you know, for families who can't afford preschool and their elderly neighbor puts the kids in front of the television with goldfish crackers, thankfully they have someone that can watch their children while they go to work. But the long-term investment in our kids, in their brain development, we know a lot more about brains than we ever did before, and I'm sure Representative Laning is right. Lots of kids can learn, you know, the 13 grades that they're there and be perfectly successful, but it would be a mistake for us not to invest in this for the kids who don't have those enriched environments, because the first 3 years of a child's life is so critical for their development. And if they're in front of the television or they're not being socialized with other kids, it really is challenging when they get to school. It's challenging for the teachers and for our teacher turnover. It's challenging for the peers. It's challenging for everyone. And this is a modest investment in a proven way for us to retain families and workers. And I would just, please vote green on this. Thank you.
Representative M. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly. I don't know if anyone has the direct contact that I do with children every single day during the school session. Many of you have seen this. And on my bus route, I have mainly single-family dwellings, but there is a portion where I have multiple family dwellings, and I can guarantee you what? I can tell which students are better behaved, more respectful, and those that have gone to early education are those kids. I think this is incredibly important for our state that we pass this bill, and I hope you will vote green.
Representative Schreiber-Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a couple of comments. Representative Becker had addressed a study that children level off at third grade. He used it as a negative. Actually, it's quite positive. Because of the early stimulation, isn't it nice that those kids level out at third grade? And because so much, as Representative Wallman just attested to, and maybe we can show you in statistics, but that brain development of children at that early age is remarkable. And to see that level off, and those kids have come to school with a positive and instead of a failing point up to the third grade, it's great. So I don't look at that as a negative at all. Most people do. Those technically are the most formative years when the child is that age. And I do want to also comment, this isn't a all-day, every-day, 365 days a year kind of program. It's approximately 12 hours per week is what the bill has denoted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Nathy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Assembly, I hope we can hit the green light on 2151. You know, we can talk about the studies on both sides of this issue till we're blue in the face. But quite frankly, it doesn't really pertain to the bill. The bill gives the choice to the parents. If they deem it, as was said previously, if they deem it important for their child to go to these early childhood care centers, that's their decision. It's not our decision. We're not putting in a law that they have to go there. All we're saying is if you decide that this is the best thing that you see for your child, we will help you pay for some of those costs. We're giving them the option, the opportunity to go through these early childhood programs. Again, we can talk about studies all day long. We also, last session, we talked about early childhood, and we ended up at the end of the session saying, let's do an early childhood study. And whatever comes out of that study, we'll work off of that. Well, out of that study came this bill. The people of North Dakota, the communities of North Dakota, are asking for this. The stats that were cited by Representative Schreiber-Beck on the different districts and the number of 3- and 4-year-olds that are in there is a result of that study. They want this. When we allowed the schools last session to use their own money for any possible early childhood programs, we saw the number of districts double. The need is out there, the desire is out there. This bill gives the parents the choice. Let's listen to the people of North Dakota and pass this bill.
Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly. I rise in opposition to the bill because I just don't think it's a good plan. And this is another example where something could very well be a good idea for some people, but that doesn't make it a good idea for government necessarily, or for the proper use of public money that we've obtained through taxation. Whether preschool is a good idea or not, this is an area that doesn't require state intervention, because as you all know, there are many areas of life that do not require state intervention. I hope we can remember that. And yes, this is a bill that is leaving it up to the parents to decide, and according to DPI, they have been deciding to do this in this state overwhelmingly on their own. Representative Mooney was absolutely correct when she said there are huge waiting lines. However, this bill will increase the demand for preschool, but it won't do anything to increase the supply or to guarantee its quality. The last speaker was correct in citing the fact that a bill was passed last session which directed the superintendent to study the state of early childhood education opportunities in North Dakota. And in 2014, that report was completed. But how this recommendation could have come out of that report, I can't understand or make the connection, because this report cites the evidence of a very large supply and demand imbalance. Quote, wait lists may also be considered an important indicator of the demand for early child care and education in North Dakota. The report cited statistics that 56% of early care and education directors, representing 37 counties, indicated that they have programs or classrooms at capacity, and they currently have a wait list. The report cited that a total of as many as 1,777 children may currently be on a wait list, with wait lists that take up to 2 years. One North Dakota parent was quoted by the study as saying, quote, you have to be very aware of openings and be ready to take an opening immediately when available. When I called about preschool options, wait lists were typically 2 years long. By that time, my child would be in kindergarten. Not surprisingly, the report cited the need to expand or create new facilities. Quote, rapid population growth statewide has resulted in gaps in early childhood care and education in North Dakota, but not because parents don't have the money. In this study, 40% of directors and administrators indicated they currently have a need to expand or create new facilities and provide services to meet demand in their area. This represents 30 different counties in North Dakota. One administrator who was quoted in this study said, well, my building is old, but I could easily start a second site. But I'm not going to now because there's no way I can find staff. I mean, I can find the kids, but I won't find staff or the money to be able to support it, but I could easily open up a second site, which leads to the next finding of the study, teacher shortages. It was stated that hiring and retaining quality teachers and providers is one of the biggest barriers to quality in North Dakota early childhood education classrooms. The study said, quote, children in North Dakota have little access to teachers with specific preparation, knowledge, and skills in child development and early childhood education. Teachers without this specific preparation are less likely to engage in warm, positive interactions with children or offer rich experiences or quality environments. So perhaps you're beginning to see a logical contradiction here between the reality that DPI, the study, is reporting to us and the reality that we are being asked to create with state funds. We can't kick against reality, and we have a problem here. The consistent theme of this report is that quality preschool teachers are in low supply, especially the kind of quality that the state should be demanding for its money, and that quality facilities are in short supply with proprietors unable to expand due to teacher shortages. And yet we're being asked to further subsidize demand for an already scarce economy, an already scarce commodity. This is going to result in further shortages. Early childhood education is one of the lowest paying professional fields. Low wages and benefits impact the quality of care and education via high turnover and minimal education requirements, according to the DPI report. One administrator said they enjoy their job, but when it comes down to an opening where they're getting paid almost double for the same work, they take it. In North Dakota, we have a lot of jobs, and this is a very low-paying job. I believe that if we pass this bill, we're going to increase the demand for a short supply. And the only alternative to labor shortages is to raise wages, to increase costs, which will only serve to increase the costs to those families who are already seeking to send their children to pre-K. We're not helping those who are on a waiting list. We're not helping those who already want to send their kids to preschool by increasing the demand. The best thing that we can do is to allow the free market to establish an equilibrium between the supply and demand for preschool and to begin subsidizing further demand in an already crowded market is not good public policy. So I would encourage a red vote.
Representative Damshin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly, I rise in opposition to this bill. For one thing, I don't think it's right for the state to promote something that would encourage taking the kids away from the home more. I think our education has increased regularly over the years, and I don't see that it has led to lower occurrence of problems amongst young people. There's no, I wouldn't argue that academically they do better until at least temporarily, but I think we need to be more concerned about making good people instead of good students. And I think there's some things that are learned in the home in the early years that can't be learned in school and can't be taught in school. So I would encourage a red vote on this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further discussion? The House has before it for final consideration Senate Bill 2151. The clerk will open the key and you may record your vote. Has every member voted? Do any members wish to change their vote? The key will be closed and the clerk will take the record. The final vote shows 50 yea, 41 nay, 3 absent not voting. Senate Bill 2051 is declared passed.